Welcome to Champagne Problems Podcast. I am your host, Robbie Shaw. Join us as we explore mental and emotional well-being, physical optimization, and the journey to discovering your highest self. Champagne Problems is brought to you in proud partnership with Bond Buzz, the alcohol-free social spirit. Cesalina Gracie, welcome to Champagne Problems.
Excited to be here.
I'm excited you're here. This is very exciting. Even though we are not in my home or my studio, we are in the graces of what's it called? Operation Podcast.
You came to LA. That's awesome.
And I'm in LA, exactly. Well, we wanted to just continue kind of the conversation we were just having. But first, how did we meet? I have seen you because you were on Gabby Reese's podcast, and so I was introduced to you there. I looked into you. I saw what you do. I love it. I'm very intrigued by it. I'm very drawn to it. And then I'm at the XPT event in Malibu, and you walk in. And I go, oh my God, there she is. So I introduced myself. We spoke very briefly. I think the first thing I brought up was your Everest summit, which we will get to. But that's it. That's how, and now we're just, thick as thieves.
I did not know that you listened to my podcast with Gabby. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, and you've been on twice now, right?
I'm supposed to go there for the second time.
Oh,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, you said that XPT was a life-changing experience for you when we met.
Yep. I've shared that a number of times, specifically with XPT recently. XPT is really about pushing your limits, and that is something that, we all do in different ways. For me personally, the underwater breath holding, pushing yourself beyond the point of panic, was something that I've never experienced before. I've certainly panicked before in various situations, but underwater with the lizard brain telling me that I am about to drown and die, and then having Gabby teach me to override that was something that I've never done before and didn't think I could do. And then doing it, the reward was insane.
I love to hear that you had that breakthrough. Realizing what we're capable of is so important in life, and the majority of people that we know end up never tapping into that space of like, wow, I'm capable of so much more. And having people in your journey like Gabby, showing you and guiding you on how to break through those walls is truly life-changing. I'm excited that this happened.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a different feeling for sure. I mean, some people are, they get hooked on that and keep pushing. And, I'm not necessarily that way. I do fall into a creature of comfort, unfortunately. And I have to push myself really hard to go into those types of challenges because they're tough, right? I mean, they're tough in every aspect, physical, mental, emotional, all of it. But tough equals rewarding, usually, if it's controlled.
I think happiness comes from you realizing that you're capable of more, because ultimately all that's happening throughout that journey of challenges, it's just you're tapping into your mindset and you're strengthening it. And your mindset is going to affect every area of your life. Mm-hmm. It's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect your self-talk, your self-esteem. It's going to affect your courage to go after, the things that you've always dreamed of, but you never thought that you would be able to get there. So it affects the life you build for yourself. And those moments that you push just through the threshold that you had, now your threshold is still there, but it's a little bit higher. But it will always exist, right? And knowing how to measure that and how to have a healthy relationship with that ultimately allows you to constantly tap into that mindset and realize like, oh, that difficult conversation that I was, dreading to have, I'm going to have, or that I'm going to reach out to that person that I've been wanting to connect for a long time and I'm worth it. So it's a balance between your self-esteem, the reality of where you are in life, and being able to just be brutally honest with yourself, and then knowing, okay, this is the work that I have to do going from here. But there's so much happiness that comes from taking those steps, and not just because they're challenging. And I think a lot of times we connect our identity with the fact that it's like, oh, I'm a hard worker, so you always think that working hard is going to be painful, but there is a whole side of joy and positive feelings that come from being able to get into those spaces and just understand, yeah, it's, pain is a part of life, disappointment is a part of life, but also I'm capable of transforming these things into something that's going to be constructive for me. And even if the lessons don't come out as you expected, as long as you're moving in a constructive direction, great things are going to happen.
Well, you just dropped the gold nuggets right up front. I do want to dig into a lot of that, but let me go backwards a little bit because I love to do some rapid fire questions at the beginning. I like to catch you off guard a little bit, if that's possible.
You can try.
I love it. No, these are easy. Just more kind of get to know you stuff. What's your favorite fruit?
I'm a fruitarian almost.
Oh.
My diet is based, I almost have 2 meals of fruits a day. So I only have lunch or dinner. I don't have 2 salty meals a day. So
Okay.
you put me on the spot. Picking one
Perfect.
fruit when I eat 10 fruits a day every day.
Yeah, I mean, what's the, put the meal fruit aside and that bite of something that makes you just go,
I love apples.
Ah, yeah. It checks every box.
It does.
The crunch,
Yeah.
the juice, the sweetness, the tart.
Yeah, let's
I
go with
love
apples.
it. Apples, perfect. Any specific kind?
Not really.
Okay. There's
Yeah.
so many. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, that's true.
Whatever. Do you listen to much music?
I listen to gospel music, classical music, just anything that I feel it's making me feel better, And a lot of times I listen to Prince of Egypt soundtracks, just usually more melodies than lyrics. It's hard to find good lyrics these days. And
Sure
I
is.
do think that, everything we consume matters, and listening to poor taste in music, meaning, very promiscuous or just negative things in songs,
Yeah.
your subconscious is absorbing all of that. So yeah, I steer clear from the new, artists.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love Zach Bryan, love Coldplay, think about modern artists, Jack Johnson. I think they all have a good message to share.
Yeah. Is there a song that you can think of that can make you cry?
There's a song from Coldplay that I cry on every concert. When he says, when she was just a girl, it always gets me. I love it.
That's a good one. Okay. What was your first live music concert?
I don't actually remember. It might have been a ballet concert because my mom was a ballerina.
Okay.
So maybe that's where my taste for classical music came from.
And you grew up in Brazil?
I did, yeah.
What part?
Rio de Janeiro.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
What's your favorite smell?
Again, I use a lot of scents and the oils. So I love orange smell, lavender, frankincense. Yeah.
What's your least favorite smell?
When the car is on in the garage and they don't pass the smog test? That's my worst smell. It feels like it's poisoning me and I have to run outside.
Well, it is poisoning you. All right. Do you read much?
Yes.
One book you're reading right now?
Well, now I'm doing a lot of research, so I'm reading psychology books, but one book I recommend every woman to read is The Gift of Fear.
We'll talk about fear here in a minute.
But The Gift of Fear is a great one. The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell changed a lot of, my conceptions about marriage and rituals and, those agreements that we make with each other in life. I was very against a lot of it, and I'm always open to changing my mind, and I feel like that happens more with books. that contradict my beliefs, so I usually go for them. The Alchemist is a must read.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
And multiple times, because depending on which phase you are in life,
Yeah.
you're going to absorb different lessons from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I recommend reading The Alchemist if you speak multiple languages, or at least 2 languages. Read in a second language as well. You know, so if you speak Spanish, read The Alchemist in Spanish, Portuguese, English. I think it's also a different exercise and a different understanding of the story.
If you could know the answer to any question, what would you ask?
Why are we so afraid to be kind? Every aggression comes out of insecurity, and kindness takes a lot of courage. I would love us to learn more about that.
Okay, you just opened a door, so we're just going to go down that path now. So tell me what you mean by kindness.
By kindness, putting ourselves in each other's shoes, being more understanding of stories that we've never lived.
Compassion.
Yeah.
Empathy. Yeah.
Extending a hand when we have the opportunity, you know, and I think we have opportunities all the time. We are just not operating that mindset. We don't even go there. You know, I think I meet a lot of people that have those breakthroughs. You know, it's a big part of my program is just developing courage, increasing our self-esteem, developing self-confidence, and then the automatic response is people become kinder because now you know also how to read the room. And when you feel confident to set boundaries, you are able to be more open because you know that if at any moment things don't go your way, or wait, now this person is kind of taking advantage, or, you know, they made a comment that they feel they have the liberty to, I know how to set a boundary without damaging that relationship, without escalating situations. And that ability allows you to be more open from the get-go because you feel that if at any moment anything happens, you will still be safe. So I do feel that kindness and self-confidence and having skills to defend yourself, they walk hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, you know, applying that to so many things that are in my life and my world, specifically a marriage, and I'm a father. I have a 14-year-old daughter. I'm going to potentially
now I know I am here.
send her your way. Exactly. But, you know, I've learned so much, first of all, because I care, right? I mean, you know, we can go through a long list of things that that ultimately have the outcome you're looking for, but some people just don't care enough. You know, some people will enter a marriage and not have, you know, a standard that they hold for themselves that if it doesn't go right, they just give up and go the other way, or even in parenting or professional world. I mean, that is a common theme, unfortunately, and obviously there's a lot of reasons for someone like that. But as I parent, as I work together with my wife on lots of things, everything turns around to me and what's in that mirror. So we can do couples counseling. I can, you know, read every book on parenting. I can do all the research. I can do all the stuff. But if I'm not good here, none of it matters. And I think that's kind of what you're saying is self-confidence, self-esteem, purpose, knowing yourself, and having the ability to execute. Then you can go out and do these other things effectively.
Yeah, it always starts with us. But I do wonder if, you know, when you say some people just don't care and they enter into a relationship or they don't care, I feel that when we label or when we judge that person doesn't care, we don't understand that they might be fighting battles that we know nothing about.
Oh,
you know?
sure.
And the not caring has such a huge baggage behind, you know.
Sure.
Why don't you care? Maybe you enter in this relationship out of fear of being alone. You know, what were your motives? And I think there are very strong motives before every single behavior. And that's what, to me, compassion and kindness is, you know. But it takes courage to sit down and go, let's understand what's happening here. If it is better to part ways, or are we afraid to do the work? Are we afraid that we're going to do the work alone and the other person is not going to meet us? Are we afraid of rejection? Are we afraid of abandonment? You know, what is your biggest fear in this relationship, and how can I rise to the occasion? But looking at people in the eye and asking the hard questions is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, and I didn't mean to, you know, simply put that they just don't care. I realize that there is a long list of life and experience that leads to that kind of behavior. So I'm with you there. All right, let's go to Jiu-Jitsu. You know, without going into kind of the lineage of your family and in that space, our listeners should know and should check out Cesalina's family and what all they've done for the jiu-jitsu world and the culture and generations back. But we don't, you know, let's fast forward to where you are today. And could you tell us a little more about the philosophies around jiu-jitsu and the principles?
Absolutely, yeah. So just for context, I come from the largest fighting dynasty in the world.
Yeah.
Which is always wild to share, but, you know.
I downplayed it a little bit.
It's, you know, but it's beautiful to see that, you know, I'm in the third generation of the Gracie family, and the principles that we learn are so powerful that we choose to continue that lineage. We're not forced into it. Nobody signs a contract when you're born that, you know, you will continue the family business. But after traveling the world, I've lived in almost every continent. You know, I always go back to it because I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And when my grandfather got exposed to jiu-jitsu, at the time he was a very troubled kid. He had ADHD. He was the nightmare of the neighborhood. You know, my great-grandfather, he would come home every day from work, and there would be literally a line of neighbors, of people lined up by the door to complain about my grandfather.
Oh my
he
God.
broke my window. He threw, you know, old mangoes on my sheets, like just constantly trouble because he didn't know what to do with his energy.
Yeah.
Now, going back to behavior, did he not care about others? You know, he was a lost kid that had a lot of energy, no direction, no self-confidence. He was super skinny, so he was always being picked on, and his response was aggression. So my grandfather fought every single day of his life until he learned jiu-jitsu. Because jiu-jitsu made him feel powerful for the first time in his life without having to look powerful or without having to impose his power. And that was a transformative thing that the principles of jiu-jitsu did for him. And when he realized, wow, this is actually a tool for self-development, he chose to dedicate his entire life to spreading those principles and to teaching those principles. So people think I come from a family of fighters. I come from a family of teachers. And when you learn something from incredible teachers, you inherently have that desire to continue spreading those lessons. So, you know, when you have strong core values that you can carry throughout your life, it doesn't matter the challenge that comes your way, you have a place to fall back to. And the principles of jiu-jitsu that you can compare to fighting as well as life are the same. And that's why so many people that start jiu-jitsu, they realize, wow, this is really helping me in life. You know, I've come across several successful entrepreneurs, you know, that have said, I would have never been where I am in my career if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu. It really got me in the mental space, in the inner strength that I needed to face every challenge that came my way, to believe in myself, and to bet in myself even when nobody else bets on me, you know? So it's important to have something that allows you to know your truth without having the world tell you. And it goes back to what we talked about. What are you capable of? With jiu-jitsu, leverage is the most important principle, you know? And leverage happens when there's connection. And in order to have connection, you need to have a strong foundation to hold you together. So in jiu-jitsu, not a single move will be effective if you don't have a strong foundation. And once you have a strong foundation, you can choose to connect or to disconnect. So it's a game of connection and disconnection. And once you connect, once you have two bodies that are attached, both seeking for a different objective through fighting, then whoever applies leverage more efficiently wins. And if you think about your life, if you have a strong foundation, if you're building that foundation, you went to XPT, you're constantly looking for things that will allow you to become stronger physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is your belief, and emotionally, then you can build anything from there. But if one of those pillars are off and your foundation is weak, you're building, on quicksand. And once you have a strong foundation in life, you have a base, you can start building. You can start choosing, okay, I'm going to connect these dots. I'm going to build and start building connections in this space. And those connections eventually allow you to get to a place where now you can leverage all the things that you've built and that you've connected, and all those dots that you've connected. Now you can leverage them to your favor.
Just that simple, huh?
Easy.
That's a little work. Why Jiu-Jitsu over other martial arts?
I've done a few other martial arts, but the thing about Jiu-Jitsu is it's all martial arts in one. Jiu-Jitsu is based in 5 pillars, and the first one is philosophy, right? Imagine giving power to somebody that doesn't have any philosophy. That is, very dangerous. So the first principle is philosophy. How do you understand the principles that you're learning and how you're going to pass it on and how you're going to apply this? Then we have self-defense, all the most common situations in self-defense. Then we have traumatic strikes, all kicks, throws, elbow throws, knee strikes. We have them in Jiu-Jitsu, but we use that to control the distance, because realistically, a 120-pound woman is not going to knock out a 250-pound man. So when we see, boxing and other sports where you're teaching just to punch, well, you have a 16-ounce glove protecting your hand. In real life, even you as a man, you punch somebody else in the face, you break your hand, you're going to the hospital to get hand surgery or, to get a cast on your hand. So is that the best strategy? Probably not. So we use traumatic strikes in Jiu-Jitsu to either cause a distraction so we can leave, or to cause a distraction so we can get closer, apply a takedown, which is the other principle. Takedowns, being able to move the fight from standing to the ground. Because when you get to the ground, the floor is a leveler of forces. So if you were standing, whoever is the strongest, whoever has the most power output will have the advantage. But when you're on the ground, that's not the case anymore, especially if you have different levels of skills, right? So then when you're on the ground, we have grappling, submission, control pins, and all of that. So it's really those 5 principles coming together that create Jiu-Jitsu and make them really effective, especially when we're talking about real life scenarios where usually the weaker person is the one who needs to defend themselves because the aggressor thinks that they have an upper hand on you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be bullies or aggressive in the first place.
Wow. I love the philosophy first piece. It just makes so much sense. Wow. Okay. So, God, these conversations are always so hard because I have my personal interests and I just want to sit here for hours and talk to you, but I've got to figure out, how to cover it all while we're talking. But let me ask one thing out of curiosity. So, competitive fighting, some of the most effective and most successful fighters in the competitive space, call it UFC, applied jiu-jitsu to their list of things that they're able to do. Did you ever consider anything competitive, or did you ever compete?
I competed in jiu-jitsu when I was young, and it's interesting because my mom is Gracie and my dad did jiu-jitsu his whole life as a hobby. He never worked with it, but he made sure we took it very seriously, and he forced me to compete my whole childhood, and that made me hate jiu-jitsu with all my guts. So for parents listening, you are the sturdy leader in your home who has the ability to tell your kids what to do that will be constructive for them and what to learn, most importantly. But when it comes to competition, you need to respect the personality of your child, because you might make them hate something that they loved. Because when you put kids to compete against each other, you are immediately making them have certain feelings for the kids standing across from them that is really hard for kids to have. At least that was my experience.
Yeah.
You know, I loved jiu-jitsu. I had mats in my living room. I grew up training, crawling on the mats. You know, it was always a place for exploration, for creativity, for conflict resolution with my siblings. You have a problem, I go on the mats and solve it, you know. But when it came to standing on the mats of, you know, a big event, looking across from it, in my time, girls and boys were competing together. I didn't have it in my heart to just go and beat that kid, you know? And even when you win, that kid is crying, it brings bad feelings into your heart. And I think there are important lessons that kids need to learn to get tough. In my opinion, that's not it. I'm not in favor of that. And for me, it didn't work. You know, it made me resent jiu-jitsu. It made me feel bad about myself. There was one fight that I was having that I was losing and I was fine with it. I was losing by points. This boy was on the mound, which means like he's pretty much sitting on top of you, preventing you from getting up or moving. And my dad was just screaming from the top of his lungs, you know, you have 20 seconds, get out of there. And the emotion I felt from seeing him in the bleachers and showing me like it's unacceptable for me to lose. It's almost like I can't go home. You know, I'm not going to be loved or celebrated or admired or respected. I'm not going to be a valuable member of this family unless I win. So, of course, I exploded out of the mount, you know. I got on top. The boy turned around, so I took his back. I choked him out. He tapped out. And I was so nervous that I couldn't even wait for the referee to raise my hand. I ran to the bathroom to, you know, throw up. So I was a winner, but I wasn't a champion. I wasn't existing in a champion's mindset. I won that fight, but I didn't feel good inside. I didn't feel like I was, you know, developing leadership in any sense. And it wasn't a positive experience for me, even if I was winning. Because I think a lot of parents will go, oh, you know, kids that don't like to compete are the ones that always lose. It's
Right.
like, no, kids that don't like to compete a lot of times don't like to deal with the feeling that they inflict on the kid that lost. That is almost harder for them than losing, because they lose, they'll get over it. They'll go home and that's fine. It will depend on how you welcome them home after a loss. But there is an age that is appropriate to get you, you know, in a competition mindset if you think that's the path. To me, that was never the path, and I don't think that's, you know, where we should be headed. I think we have way too much competition and way less collaboration than we should. So I always veer towards collaboration, and that is my view of jiu-jitsu, is we're collaborating with each other, we're training, we're giving our best. So I respect you enough to give my best, and you respect me enough to give me your best. But ultimately, we are helping each other rise by collaborating with each other, not by coming with the mindset, I'm going to murder you. Like, there's no way you're going to win. Like, I'm going to beat you up. Those are like very heavy, dense thoughts that don't necessarily move you to a happy place, to a constructive place, to a joyful place. And then if you're living to win, that you're going to pay, you know, the price for that at some point.
Wow. That was really interesting to hear from you, in the sense, because I you know, jiu-jitsu was never part of my life, but sports were. And I was pushed very hard to play sports. And I wasn't a competitor like that. I say that, and I'm still not quite sure whether I was or wasn't. I like to win, but I'm not sure I cared that much. We're back to the care thing. I don't know what it was. I was pushed to play. And I'm not sure I was the type of kid that really wanted that for myself. And maybe it was an avoidance of some of those feelings and thoughts that you said. I think that probably makes a lot of sense, because there is an intensity inside of me that gets pretty high. And I at that young age, those young ages, I wasn't able to identify what it meant or control it. Therefore, I would just kind of not go in fully committed because I was fearful of that intensity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And my daughter is very similar. She's very sensitive. And we don't push her to play sports, even though I played basketball in college because I was not forced, but I was forced at a certain level, and then I got good. And so I continued playing because I was good, but I didn't really enjoy it.
I think the practice of sports is very important because it builds character. And all those emotions that we're talking about, they can exist in practice, in class. So I push my students, they're training, they're sparring, and I push them to points where they feel frustrated, as if they had lost in a competition, you know? So experience the full spectrum of emotions is really important. So I am very much in favor of putting kids in sports, and especially when they say, oh, I don't like it, I'm gonna quit. No, you keep them there, because the moment that they want to quit and you tell them this is good for you and you're gonna continue, that is when they change. That's when they realize, oh, I'm capable of more. Because otherwise they're gonna live accepting that giving up is an option. Because they're not giving up on that practice, they're giving up on themselves. They're giving up on the ability that they have to handle whichever emotion is coming to the surface when they show up. So if it's a team sport, they're avoiding the feelings of, are you, being told what to do? Are you able to stand up for yourself? How are you contributing to the group? Which voice do you have? Whatever it is that they're struggling to find in that space is exactly what they need to find. So I think I practice almost every sport. My parents put us in tennis, they put us in gymnastics, they put us in swimming. We were always like doing a sport for a couple of years and then switching, but jiu-jitsu was the common ground where we were doing jiu-jitsu for life. We were always training jiu-jitsu, plus there was another sport. My mom put us in music, she put us in singing lessons, and she diversified a lot so we could get the best stimulus out of each practice and sort of build upon that. But having something is crucial, especially at this day and age. They need to get stronger in their bodies. They need to get moving. They need to be face to face with other kids. So is your daughter in any sports right now?
Horseback.
I would encourage you to also sign her up to something else.
Yeah.
Because horseback is a very individual sport where, it's really important that she's having that connection with an animal and reading the animal's behaviors and adjusting hers accordingly, and then taking charge of that animal. Super important to learn how to lead. You're leading a horse. So it's definitely allowing her to enter a space that most kids don't even get to exist, because it's a big animal, and it will definitely make her feel powerful in that sense. But she needs to, especially as a teenager, she needs to be interacting with other teenagers and to be dealing with the mess that is all personalities and pack orders and all of that, because that's really going to prepare her for the work environment, for relationships. Setting boundaries with kids that are in practice with her is going to allow her to set boundaries with boys when she goes to college, or whatever it is that she chooses to do in life. But especially at this day and age, we need to get kids and teenagers in practices, in group classes, so they exercise those muscles that are being extremely underdeveloped.
Yeah. We're on it. We're working on it. She played sports up until about a year ago.
Yeah.
She's an artist. She's a painter, and she's a horseback rider. We're working on the team sports. All right, let's go to your young girl female empowerment program. We've touched on a lot of the philosophies you believe in and you live by and you train, but let's talk about it. So what is your program called, and what is the mission of it?
Right now, it's Cesalina Gracie Studio, and the mission is to provide tools for every girl and women to live in power. And ultimately, it has a holistic approach to jiu-jitsu and self-defense, and there is a lot of exercises for emotional intelligence. We do eye contact drills, we do psychology drills, body language, we do role plays, and we do all real life scenarios according to each age group. So I start with girls as young as 2 years old, up to women in their best age. I have students that started training with me when they were 50, and they've been training for 3 years and their lives have never been better. So being able to work with a 2-year-old girl and help her develop skills that will be useful for that age, and then also have women that are, mid 50s on the mats that are telling me, wow, I'm rediscovering all of these things about myself, and I'm finally, working through childhood experiences that I never targeted because I didn't realize they were living in me. So it's super rewarding. It's a constant reminder for me, to continue on the path, and nothing will keep you as honest as kids. They will immediately tell you if you're not practicing what you preach. And yeah, it took me a while to find my own path and within that big family legacy. And I owned jiu-jitsu schools in the past. In 2012, I opened my first school, so 12 years ago. And it was for girls, men, boys, just everyone, But something inside of me was always like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing from an outside look, but something feels off in my heart, and I always wanted to work with just girls and women, and to really, because I always knew like our needs are different. And in my heart, I never felt that I had a school that I knew was made for me growing up. I was always like, yeah, my family is here, like I'm welcome here, but this wasn't created with me in mind, And when it comes to the methodology, we have, challenges that a lot of times boys and men don't really face, because we have to realistically understand that there are expectations in society that also gets us, conditioned about certain behaviors. Yep. Put other people's comforts above your own, don't be rude, be polite, that's not ladylike, and blah, blah, blah. And you hear that since you're a kid. When a girl that is 6 years old, is welcoming guests at her house, and the dad is telling her, go hug your uncle, and she doesn't want it, you are literally telling her you don't have servancy over your body. Other people have the right to come and hug you, even if something in you tells you that you don't want that person all over you. So later on in life, what are you showing that girl, that she cannot put her comfort above other people's comforts, even if that means that they have the right to her body, to her space, disrespectful comments, just pretend you're not listening. So there is a whole, existence that women go through that unless you're a girl or a woman, it's hard to really understand because you never felt it in your skin. Yeah. And I've always wanted to empower women to use jiu-jitsu in their everyday life. You don't have to listen to that disrespectful comment and pretend nothing happened, You don't have to hug people you don't like. You don't have to let, your coworker that is super drunk to be talking in your face when, he's truly invading your space. Like, there are ways that you can do both by using your voice and by using your body to control your space, to control the distance, to navigate both social scenarios as, scenarios where the stakes are higher, in a way that honors and protects and serves you and your well-being. So that has always been my passion. And now for 7 years, I decided to work with just girls and women, and really fine-tune my methodology to address all the things that we go through. So, when a girl is 2, what we're working on is, another kid comes and takes a toy away from your hand. How do you deal with that without, getting another toy and smacking them in the head, Yeah. And believe me, 2-year-olds
just a light
understand.
grapple.
Yeah, right? So how do you respond aggression and, invasion of space without doing the same with the other person? And we literally get 2.5-year-old girls resolving conflict verbally, Wow. And then as you get older, is kids cutting you in line. So your turn never comes, how do you deal with that? It's mean comments, or like they start pushing around and getting more physical. How do you respond to that? And, with teenagers, it's like, how do you address rumors that your best friend started about you that you don't know if it's true? Yeah. But then you never talk to the best friend because somebody said that she was saying things about you. No, you go look at her in the eye and say, I really appreciate our friendship. Did you say this about me? I want to ask you first, and then you start really existing in your power, and you start taking matters in your own hands because they're about your life. So the biggest thing about this program is every single woman and girl that has walked through that door, we have made the decision to not outsource our safety and to not outsource our decisions and our choices. Your choice is your own, your decisions are your own, and your safety is your own. So that's how we navigate the world. Right, Chloe?
Ain't that right, Chloe? Holy moly. Oh, Cesalina, this is just too good. It's too, like, look, I know I'm a white man. It's no surprise. I know this. I have a wife who is a hardline feminist. We talk about this stuff a lot. I have a daughter. I come from a family that falls right in line with all the I'm not gonna say negative or bad, but that stuff that we're talking about. Like that, I was raised in a family that just was not privy to any of what you're talking about, and so I have learned a lot over the years about myself and about women and females and my mother and all the things that you all go through. And of course, I do not understand even an inkling of it because I've never felt it, but I try, and that's all I can do. And it's a breath of fresh air to hear you say this, because it's everything you say I want for the women in my life.
And even though my company is, a movement in favor of women, it's just what you said. I believe we do it together. The biggest supporters of my program are fathers, are brothers. They all spread awareness. They all send my videos. They all encourage the women in their lives to learn self-defense, to join my classes, to stand up for themselves. And I think we are living a societal shift as well, right? So yeah. We are evolving, as well as society is becoming aware that how they've been treating women for so long is unacceptable. Right? And they have been removing our rights for no reason. And we decided to get together and stand up for ourselves. But change doesn't happen if it's only, women standing up for themselves, because we do exist in this world with men. We'll always work with men. We interact with men. We're in relationships with men, whether it's work, personal, building families, whatever it is that integrates men in your space. Even if you go to a workout class, there will be men there, and that's the beauty of this world, is that we have so many different personalities and beings existing, and we need to learn how to work together to improve both of our lives, So at no moment have I ever, risen the question of oh, this is a movement just for us and against them. No, it's I always invite you guys into the conversation, and please help us out. If you want to be part of a constructive movement, it's going to accelerate it tremendously, right? But I do feel that a lot of times the wake-up call is when men have a daughter, or, when they finally hear wait, what? My sister went through this? Or, Mom, is that true? Because these statistics are not real. 83% of women do not suffer sexual harassment throughout their lives. Mom, did you ever suffer anything? There's no way. And it's yeah, actually this happened with my boss, or this happened with, a boyfriend that I had. And at the time we had no voice. And it's so transformative when men are wow, can you imagine if this was happening with me multiple times in my life? And I do think it's important that we always leave that door open for, to unite strengths.
Okay, how do I get your teaching, your training over on the East Coast?
I get asked to go everywhere. I'm I should build 100 clones, Yeah. So I'm launching a digital platform in January.
Nice.
Because I've gotten so many requests of families that just send me, large and very long letters and messages and emails talking about serious issues that their daughters are facing, that their families are facing, and I just can't be everywhere at the same time. I'm growing as fast as I can, but my studio is in LA, so we're launching a digital platform in January where women and girls will be able to attend my classes live, and we'll have a library, obviously, of classes and of techniques that you can learn in your own timing. But one thing that is pivotal for me that I told my team is I want to have direct connection and interaction with my students, you know? So I feel a lot of digital platforms offer, such a rich library of classes and moves and and movements, but it's not just about that. That's such a small component of your growth, you know? And even if we are online, I want to be able to interact with them. So I'm super excited about that, and we're working on it. Hopefully by January we'll be ready. Tech, you know, sometimes you think it's gonna move,
Who
and
knows?
it takes longer, but that's the goal. And then I do workshops, you know, throughout the country. So usually when there is a large group of people, they're like, okay, I'm gonna put a group of my community together. Will you come and teach us? You know, if you have like 30 people, I'll come.
Okay, got it. We're gonna ask you to come. There's a group of mothers and daughters in my town that my wife and daughter are a part of. God, I can't remember what it's called. She's gonna kill me. But they have speakers and they have different people coming to tell you. Anyway, fantastic. Very excited about the online aspect, as I'm sure you are as well. That means great growth for you and the spreading of the message.
Yeah, I'm just fulfilling demand. You know, I've
Yeah.
been asked to share videos of what I teach in classes and social media for years, and I never did it. And I was like, okay, I'll do one video a week. Stop asking me. Like, let's see what happens, you know. And I don't know where the resistance comes from when it comes to online, but I feel like I thrive so much in real life connections because I can read and I can see the transformation immediately.
Yeah.
And it keeps me in check on, okay, what do I need to improve? What do I need to learn with this girl, you know, or with this situation, or this girl has autism. How can I better serve her? How can I communicate with her in a way? What is the nonverbal, you know, signals that I can give her? And, you know, so personally, selfishly, in-person connections make me grow so much faster as well, you know, and it's tangible. But I've had so much success online, and I feel like the first step to that was I launched a program in September with NCL, National Charity League, for 6,000 girls. Yeah.
That's the program.
That has been amazing. And we have 6,000 girls enrolled, and it has been incredible. So that is what motivated me to start my own digital platform, because I was like, if it's going that well with them, you know, and they took the chance to implement my program online, and we do live classes, and the girls get assignments after the class, and they have to fill out these assignments. The assignments are always around the principles that I teach. So, you know, posture of a champion is the theme, and the assignment is on courage. So it's them applying that in their own lives and filling out an assignment on how they practice courage. What does courage mean? What were the moments in their lives that they feel that they lacked courage? And how can courage, you know, make them better? And then what is a situation where you use the posture of a champion and they have to write about it, you know? So it's been incredible. And I never thought that I could have such a large group to really benefit from it. And what are the odds of me getting 6,000 girls in a physical space? It's not going to happen, right? So that opened a whole other door for me to understand that I can have so much more impact with my program if I go the digital route.
That's kind of funny, right? That's the program I'm talking about?
Oh, really?
Yes, it's NCL.
Oh, how funny. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't understand. Are you...
So your daughter can probably join my classes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have a class on this Wednesday. So your wife and your daughter can sign up.
Through NCL.
Through NCL, yes. And it's actually for girls around your daughter's age. I think they're all, 8th graders or more, yeah.
Perfect.
So, yeah. I'll see her there.
Well,
Tell
there
her to wave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's amazing. Okay, so let's do a little Everest talking. What the hell? How do you do that?
Is Everest a dream of yours?
I don't know. I can't give you a yes or no on that one. Fear gets pretty heavy on that question. So talk me through your experience on that one.
Everest was such a life-changing experience for me.
Of course
it was just very unusual as everything else in my life. It's always last minute, which is, just a reminder on the importance of being ready and staying ready. And the way to stay ready is to have a strong mindset and a set of principles that you follow that you can fall back on when it really matters. And Everest was one of these moments that really mattered, And I had 6.5 weeks notice to go climb that mountain. I had never climbed a mountain before. You know, I've done other very challenging things, but nothing in the mountaineering space. And the situation was, I had to make a decision. Am I willing to go through this? And once you make that decision, there's no looking back. There's no questioning. There's no energy to be wasted questioning the decision that you made. All the energy is towards being successful in this expedition, which means coming back home safely. You know, reaching the summit is the goal, but it cannot be your main objective. Your main objective is to come back home. And when that opportunity came, my biggest motivation to say yes was, it was that moment where it was like, this is what I've been looking for my whole life, an opportunity to show that the principles of jiu-jitsu work anywhere, including in the most hostile and hospitable place in the world. So how can I take the principles of jiu-jitsu and show the world that they work in the most extreme situations? Everest is perfect. You know, you have altitude. It's just everything piled into one. You have elements of unexpected. You have to make decisions under pressure. You have to acquire skills. You have to take care of yourself. You can't put other people's lives in jeopardy. And most importantly, you need to have a strong foundation. So I said yes, you know, and the journey to climbing Everest started way before I got to the mountain. And, you know, Everest is an expensive endeavor. And I remember I barely had any time to reach out to companies to try and find sponsors. And I had already booked my flight and I was leaving in 4 days and I still didn't have sponsors. And I called Gabby Reese and I said, Gabby, I've been training for 6 weeks for this. I put everything in line and I can't believe I'm not going to go just because I don't have the money. And, you know, she said, well, Cess, you can't ask for people to bet on you if you're not willing to bet on yourself. That might be one of those moments. And I told her I was so scared. I was like, am I going to go into my savings and pull like all my money out for something that I might not even make it to base camp? Who knows? You know, like, of course I believed in myself, but realistically, there are a lot of elements that are out of your control. And, you know, by talking to her, she brought me back to my why. And if your why is strong, you're willing to do anything for it, right? So I hung up with her and I was like, wow, I'm going to do this, you know? So I had to face that decision. I feel that was the breakthrough for me to be successful in that expedition was, yeah, nobody's willing to bet on me. You know, companies didn't have enough time to build just a marketing strategy to even capitalize on that journey. I was leaving in 48 hours. So I was like, I'm going to bet on myself. And ultimately, you know, that's what I did. And once I was already at base camp, for a week, I closed with a sponsor and the money came in, which was so stressful. But, you know, it's a testament that so many times we are waiting for people to make things happen in our lives, you know, and the train is parked at the station and we're waiting for somebody to come and bring in the diesel and check the tires and like do this for me. But people are more willing to jump on a train that is already moving, you know, because now you know there's momentum, there's a direction, and this is a fully operating train. If the train is parked at the station, who knows if it's broken, if it's ever going to leave, you know, you don't want to put your suitcase in there and then it doesn't go anywhere. So that was the beginning of the journey, was just making the decision to bet on myself, even if nobody else was willing to do. And surprisingly to me, Gabby already knew, like once you do that, you just move energy around you. And now you're a train headed for a mission, headed for a destination. And then everybody wants to come on board.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
that was all you needed to do, was decide to do it.
Yeah. And, you know, that it was an opportunity for a lot of things. You know, I became the 8th Brazilian woman to summit Mount Everest. And to think that in over 103 years of climbing the mountain, only 8 Brazilian women ever made it to the top. It's like, it's less than 1 woman per decade, you know? So it was an opportunity for me to make a statement in that regard and to show, you know, mountaineering, even more than fighting, it's a highly male-dominant space. So, you know, hence the principles of jiu-jitsu in my upbringing were very helpful in reaching the top. And when I think about that expedition, there were so many moments where several people quit. And they were needless to say, a lot more experienced than I was. I was the most prepared physically, mentally. I didn't have any altitude sickness. I was doing breath work every day. I optimized my oxygen consumption. I kept my lungs operating at a maximum capacity. All the issues that you suffer in altitude, your lungs stop operating. You have a hard time transporting oxygen through your blood to your muscles, which makes it hard to your brain. It makes it hard to make decisions. Mindset is a big thing. Sickness is a big thing. And obviously skill, strength, my body was ready. I just adapted my training for that. And I started acquiring all the skills that I had to do because my coach, Michael McCassell, made it very clear, Cesalina, you have to be as self-sustainable in the mountain as possible. Do not rely on a Sherpa. Do not rely on anybody, because if an avalanche comes that takes down your Sherpa and doesn't take you, you need to be able to take yourself back down. You need to be able to survive, and anything can happen in that environment. And of course, you will need a Sherpa with you at all times, but I want you to be prepared that if a fatality happens with him, you will survive. So I want you to learn all the knots. If you lose your rappel device, if you lose your ascender, do you know how to make the knots to rappel the mountain and go back to base camp? Do not rely on your equipment, but know your equipment thoroughly. You will be physically ready. He ran all my tests, my metrics, my VO2 max. Everything was perfect for that environment. But your mindset comes from, I'm committed, I'm determined, I'm going to learn everything I can learn about this thing throughout. Like, all of my time is coming to learning the equipment, learning how to put my own crampons. And, time was really crunched, but there are people that have been climbing for 10 years that didn't know how to put their crampons. There was a girl in my expedition attempting to climb Everest without oxygen, and her Sherpa was putting her crampons in every crampon stop. So then you're really relying on somebody else for your survival and for your success, and you're putting an unfair strain on that person that is already handling so much. I mean, Sherpas are so strong. They're genetically made for that environment, Their lungs are built differently. Their limbs are shorter. Like, literally everything in their bodies was optimized to handle a low oxygen environment. But be reasonable. You have
right.
to be able to handle yourself.
Throw 'em a bone here.
And I do understand when people say, oh, we shouldn't have beginners in the mountain because they're fully relying on Sherpas. But those are the things that a lot of times people who have been climbing for a long time, they just still take advantage of that. And, and that's where the mindset comes from. Show up as your best self, no matter where you are, no matter if it's hard, no matter if it's cold. And so my whole training was part of that, learning how to use my ascender, everything with the summit gloves, not training just with my hands, because when you're up there and it's cold, you don't want your Sherpa grabbing your equipment to help you go up. Like, can you operate these tools without being able to feel your fingers, So he would freeze my hands. I would do planks on ice during training. My coach was a pivotal part of preparing me physically and mentally for everything that was coming my way. And I attribute that to my preparation, the team that I put together before the climb, my mindset, and, how I took on every detail and I worked on it relentlessly with my eyes closed. Until I could do those knots with my eyes closed, I would not stop. I was working all day, every day. Time off at base camp, acclimatizing, I was in my tent, putting on my gear and getting out. Putting it on, getting it out. Putting it on, getting it out. Putting my crampons on, taking off. Putting my crampons on. I learned how to fix it. Like, one of my crampons came out and I was like, I had my crampons tool in my pocket, in my jacket, if something happened, So when you are operating at that level, then all of the big things, they become small things, and you're able to make your world small and just go one step at a time. And by taking one step at a time, you reach the summit. And by taking one step at a time, you come back down.
Easy as that.
Wasn't easy. But it's possible to make a plan and execute on a plan. Yeah.
Wow. Man, that's intense. When in your life, or have you always been committed to those kinds of levels? Did you ever have a time in your life where you had low self-esteem, maybe even battled anxiety, didn't believe in yourself?
Constantly, all the time. We all have those thoughts.
Yeah.
We all have those thoughts. And by going for bigger challenges, you build that self-esteem. You have those reminders. Oh, I went through this. I can do this. I already went through that. Avarice is one of the things, that I use for myself when in my day-to-day life I get scared of something. I'm like
I did that.
summoned avarice. Like, are you crazy? Like, you put your life in line, literally. No, go do this.
Yeah, I could do this interview with Robbie, right?
Yeah, exactly. So intimidating.
Terrified.
But, like things in my business and growing and putting yourself out there and dealing with hateful comments, on like whatever it is that you might sometimes hold back pressure. Like, what do you think about this? It's like, oh no, we do this for ourselves. Like, I do this for me, and when those situations come where we question ourselves, where, maybe your self-esteem is low, you have something to rely on. And, I left home when I was 17 years old. I moved to London. And I had several situations that I didn't have confidence to speak up, that I didn't have self-esteem. But then you start reminding yourself, oh no, actually, that thing that I learned that was angry at my parents for, making me do, now I see how useful that is. And I'm going to apply that. So that goes back into the responsibility is in the parents' hands to be the sturdy leaders in their home. And I was fortunate that I had sturdy leaders and that I had a great example. I never saw my parents drinking. They never had alcohol. There was never, sodas in the house. So if you want your kids to succeed, build an environment that will foster that. It's not them saying, oh, but all my friends do this. My parents never allowed sleepovers. They were very protective with us. And they encouraged us to set boundaries. They encouraged us to do handshakes instead of hugs. So I came from an environment that prepared me to deal with the world. But when I went and faced the world as a teenager by myself living in Europe, I faced a lot of those situations. And in some of them, I was able to speak up, but a lot of them, I waited too long, and I did let people cross boundaries, and I did get scared to stand up for myself, and I did have low self-esteem in certain situations. But, those were all reminders that I still had work to do. And to this day, I still do, so the journey never ends.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. You are human.
I promise.
Awesome. Again, I could sit here for hours, but thank you for agreeing to do this with me. This was extremely powerful, extremely inspirational. All of it. It was all of it. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, Cesalina.
Thank you for the opportunity. That was great.
Of course. Hopefully we can do a part 2 in a couple years.
We will. And I will have a book to sell.
Ooh.
And I will have stuff, Yeah.
Stuff. Well, I was going to say, is there anything that we can expect next? I mean, I know you've got your online program coming out, but is there a book in the works or maybe a podcast?
I get asked to do a podcast all the time, but I take everything seriously, and as you saw from this conversation, I take everything to the extreme. So if I decide to ever launch a podcast, I'm going all in, right? But there is a book. There is a book in the works. I'm working on a book right now, and you can sign up for a class at Cesalina.com and just stay tuned. YouTube, Cesalina Gracie, Instagram, Cesa Gracie. Just if you're following me on socials, you will see announcements and you'll be able to keep up to whatever's coming up next.
Fantastic. Cesalina Gracie, thank you for coming on Champagne Problems.
Thank you, Rob.